Hello, everybody. Damien here with PolyAI, and welcome to the Deep Learning with PolyAI podcast, the only podcast, period. That's it. The only podcast, the only one that you need to worry about anyway. I'm here with CEO and co-founder of PolyAI, Nikola Merchik. Hey, Nikola, how are you?
Not bad. I'm pretty good. How are you?
Excellent. Doing very well. Thank you very much. And we are thrilled to have yet another episode, and I'm thrilled to host another episode. We miss Michelle. Hopefully she'll be coming back soon. But in the meantime, let's talk about some big things that are happening in the headlines, unless, of course, you want to talk about the mushroom coffee that I'm drinking for the first time. It's quite delicious.
Why are you drinking mushroom coffee?
I kind of bought into the hype a little bit. There was, the nootropics, the benefits of various lion's mane mushrooms and what. So I'm going to give it a try. We'll see.
What is mushroom coffee? Is it coffee or is it like?
It's got a coffee extract, so it tastes a little like coffee and it brings a little caffeine, but it's mostly just ground up pulverized mushrooms. But I bought into it. I got into the hype. It came in really nice packaging too.
I'm drinking regular coffee.
Oh, good to know. Good to know. I'll probably be going that route here really soon. But anyway, a lot of stuff has happened over the past few days. I want to dive right into it and talk about one of the, maybe two key announcements, but let's lead with one. And that is the formation or the announcement, the launch of this AI Alliance. It's basically initiated by IBM and Meta. It's 50 organizations around the world, including some pretty significant names in academia, research and development, a lot of big builders, enablers, commercial players in the AI space. And they're all serving as founding members. And I assume this thing is going to grow if it takes off. Their mission right off of the site is to, quote, build and support open technologies across software, models, and tools. So we'll talk about these individually today. To enable developers and scientists to understand, experiment, and adopt open technologies, and advocate for open innovation with organizational and societal leaders, policy and regulatory bodies, and the public. Okay, so we're talking legislative, we're talking commercial applications, we're talking development, we're talking democratization. What's big is open, right? So let's definitely touch on that in a moment. Members currently include NASA, CERN, Intel, Red Hat, NYU, Cleveland Clinic, AMD. There's a number of universities, as I mentioned. We've got representation here in Massachusetts. There's a couple entities. Stability AI is one of them in the UK. So really interested to kind of get your take on the membership base, at least as they came out of the gate. But one of the things I wanted to focus on initially is that there are almost half of the member base are academic institutions. So I want to get your initial impression on this formation of the AI Alliance. How does it strike you? What are the thoughts, good, bad, or indifferent, that are coming through your head right now? And then I definitely want to dive into a little bit more about why such a heavy academic presence? Like, what's the long play? So let's get your initial thoughts first.
Look, I think that, if you think about how like cloud came together and then you have a few players, right? Like this whole business of large language models and the new generation of AI, it's expensive. It's really expensive.
Sure.
Right? So I think if you just look at the resource needs for this stuff, they need to band together to be able to compete with a Google and a Microsoft, because these companies are incredibly well capitalized and willing to invest serious amounts of money, right?
Right.
So if you just think of, I think the open source movement has been great, and people are trying to do, like to build better models with fewer parameters and just at lower cost and to mimic what the bigger labs are able to do. But they don't have those resources. So I think that kind of like, it's almost like federated learning, right? Where they're coming together to pool their resources to have just the war chest required to be maybe, a third pillar of the LLM endgame, even just as, like a cloud like resource that you will provide and make money on, right?
Sure.
And keeping these guys in check and everything else, it makes a lot of sense, right? Like universities in particular, it's been a long time since, the top AI researchers worked at universities, right? I mean, some still do, right? And there are some great people there, but you'll notice that most people who were academics in machine learning now have, if they are still academics, they have dual affiliations where they are working for Google, DeepMind.
Sure, they're in the labs.
OpenAI, they're affiliated with them both because they can do better work there with better resources, with far better engineering support, right? And just bluntly because they're paid a lot of money, right? And Like people left their tenure jobs at universities when they were offered 10, 20 times the annual compensation to go work for Google instead, right? And that first wave of people going to work at DeepMind, at Fair, Facebook's research, right? Um, like that was big exodus, right? And they weren't really sparing any resources to pull those guys over, right? And
Right.
then those guys brought their students, and AI research just really shifted into very few companies. So
But that's not the
um,
only. But that's not the only movement. I mean, obviously, yourself, you have a PhD in machine learning. So do our co-founders at PolyAI. You decided to start your own business, right? And
yeah,
that's another viable choice. How many people actually stuck around in academia with those strained resources and knowing what sort of capital and intensive sort of resourcing is necessary to really research and dive into next iterations of machine learning?
a few, but very few. I would
Yeah.
say the maybe of the people who were doing PhDs at the same time as we did, um, probably well under 10%.
Wow.
Um, and I think for a lot of people right now, it's just a lot less competitive to get those lectureships and stuff. And a lot of the universities have also adapted to allow these multiple affiliations because they're kind of maybe hoping that we'll weather through, and like
Right.
eventually people who really are academics at heart will continue to do that in academia, right? It's probably not happening in the foreseeable future, just given the growth in the area. But like universities have a really important role to play, right? In both in training the next generation, but also in scrutinizing, in making both doing fundamental analysis, right? Working in areas of machine learning that don't have immediate commercial viability,
Right.
right? But, there are research labs. Say Microsoft Research has for a long time been a place where they did fund fundamental research, not just commercially driven research. And I think
Right.
same holds in to quite a large extent for DeepMind as well, right? Not fundamental research of any kind, but research in AI, right? So yeah, I think like some people started companies, but I think that's just like a collection of weirdos that want to do something else entirely, right?
Weirdos who drink regular coffee. I don't know what that's about. Join the actual weirdos who drink mushroom coffee.
Yeah.
It's funny that you mentioned that with regards to sort of the do you follow a commercial track where obviously you have an alignment to the fiscal success of a given commercial entity versus something like what this alliance is alleging or promising, which is we're bringing in academics who are still aligned to these educational institutions, to these research labs, et cetera. They're going to help inform. We're going to work together in a true like consortium environment, but we're not paying them, right? So they still have their own agenda. They're not a part of our staff. They're not being brought in to lead our labs or our research and development. Do you think that's going to, one, float up the importance of academia and helping to guide those bigger issue questions, the bigger picture questions like legislation, governance, ethical deployment, et cetera? Or do you think this is a little bit of frosting on a cake that says we're doing this to push IBM and um, IBM and Meta's place in the space?
I think there's space to do both. I'll be weirdly non-cynical this time and say, like, look, it makes
Okay.
sense. Like if player 3, 4, 5 band together to help, and if what they need to do to remain competitive with the top two is, do some good, like why not, right? Also, I think like academia needs these resources. This is getting really expensive, and like
Yeah.
I don't know how fast public funding will find its way there. So if these guys are willing to chip in and help in that way, I think that's a great thing, right? Because academia is tremendously important, and it needs to be able to at least stay informed, right? Because if all the
Right.
work is happening behind closed doors, in like two places on the planet, like I mean, that's probably just not the optimal way to go about doing it anyway, right? As a humankind.
I, I would see that as being true, right? I also wonder what the effect is internally at these educational institutions. Like, how is it going to affect common curriculum? Is this really disruptive to where now these institutions of higher learning are going to affect entire curricula? Is that also maybe a potential outcome of this alliance? Is essentially organizations that are tasked to not only produce the next generation of academics who continue the research, who continue the building, but also those who are being pushed out into the workforce who need to carry those to earn those big paychecks with the big tech providers, that are going to help them gain a competitive advantage. How does this affect the curriculum, this particular alliance movement affect the
I don't
curriculum at these
know.
participating institutions?
I mean, I have no clue, right? I think that like I haven't read into a thing like do they profess to like are they is the plan to write new curriculums? I mean, they really if they're keeping universities independent, then they shouldn't be, no?
Right. Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't think so, but if there's this motion towards this general mission motion about towards making open models and advancing access and democratization to, AI tools and whatnot, then the assumption is that that would be sort of starting in the educational institutions that are preparing folks for that next generation of workforce. Uh, this is so new. It just was announced yesterday. I don't think that there's a lot of like fine print with regards to what the potential outcomes are. I just wonder if this is like those initial steps because of such a heavy concentration of academic institutions in the founding cohort.
I think we just have to see how it's going to work and like what it's going to mean. I mean, at the end of the day, maybe it's resource pooling, maybe it's just a forum. Who knows? But like, I don't have a strong opinion.
Yeah. All right.
Always happy to indulge conspiracy theories. I just don't have any for what you asked. I do apologize.
No, it's all right. We're catching you on a less cynical day today. This is amazing, and a less like peel back the layers. All right. What about downstream? There's a lot of commercial entities that are obviously participating in this alliance as well. And once those folks who are newly armed with their
I'll give you a
doctorates.
cynical take. I just thought of
Okay.
a cynical
All
take.
right. Here we
Okay.
go.
So the one thing that's actually potentially quite good here is that if you have access to universities and you're like IBM, Facebook, etc., like that's a good hiring funnel for them, like a really good one, right?
Which is a
So,
perfect segue into my next question, which is how is this going to affect the org designs for these not necessarily the end user organizations. I know we talked about how our solution like can affect things in the contact center, but just the grander scheme of things. What does this brand new focus on on making accessible these sort of like massive tools, having a legislative backbone to it, having sort of a fundamental way to roll it out ethically, responsibly? How does that affect the org design of the future? Do you think this alliance is going to take on the task of how they're going to establish the new wave of the enterprise org design to accommodate for the fact that a lot of the base level functionalities and whatnot may displace some jobs, and so we want to show that this is actually a good thing in the long run?
I don't know. Is that really the level of, is that what you're talking about? And the level of ambition?
Who knows? It's speculation at this time, right?
I mean, look, I have no clue. I don't think like organizational design of enterprises has much to do with this. I think it's, like we've been creating benchmarks in machine learning, working on tasks, etc., collaborating for a very long time, right? So if there's going to be like just one body that helps advance it and standardize things, and maybe it has impact on legislation, that's probably a good thing. But like, I just don't know. Well, let's see if it lives, right?
That's true. This could be a flash in the pan. You never know.
Yeah.
Um, Oddly enough, within a day, Google comes out, announces Gemini. They're claiming it's the most comprehensive and advanced generative AI multimodal offering on the market. Front and center on their website is here's the performance metrics against some of the current market leaders, and you can see we're beating them in every category. A little bit of a different approach than what IBM and Meta are doing with this alliance, kind of taking the altruistic walk into the next generation, and very timely, basically saying, no, we're Google and we're gonna build something that we think is going to disrupt OpenAI's dominance in the space. Two very different tacks. What's your take?
Yeah. Look, I mean, everyone's been wondering where the hell, like, what's happening with Google? Why they're so slow? Have they like lost their mojo? Right? Like they were the AI company, right?
Right.
And they say it will be available, I think, on December 13th. Let's see. Um, I just don't know why they do this. Just make it available immediately. Like this is like you're like a PR guy. I mean, this is just like I don't think this will make it a better launch, right? Just make it available. Let me play with it. Let me use it,
Right.
right? ChatGPT did what it did because it was such a good interface, easily available, right? Like, come on, like this is a weak research paper, right?
Yeah.
when you like, I've had feedback many times on my papers where they're like, cool results, like, are you making this available so that people can reproduce them, right? Like, okay, like, I'm sure they will. December 13th is not a lifetime away, right? So we'll see, but come on, just like, let us play with it. They have to build it, right? Like, they have to be the number two player. They might emerge as the number one player because, frankly, they have the infra. They're very good at scaling. Like, if I had to bet on who's gonna like do scaling and efficiency, just around like support levels and stuff for AI at scale, like, 3 years ago, for answer to not be Google would be shocking, right?
Yeah,
So I think,
true.
if this thing is finally comparable to GPT-4 and they can make it easily available at scale, right? And maybe they make it tunable, maybe they do some other things. I think they got to start working harder, right? Like, they got to push things out a lot faster than what they've been doing so far, because these announcements aren't worth that much. And I don't know if this had to do with the AI alliance. I have no clue.
I mean,
But
as a PR guy, I
think-
would say
think-
it. I think it was heavily influential.
okay, but think about like, what was the other announcement they had where they were talking about like something BART related, like a day before the dev day, and it's just been like sour grapes left and right. So I don't know, man. Maybe they need a better PR guy.
Are they standing in the shadow and just sort of trying to jump out and say, "Hey, by the way, we're doing something too"? Is that
Yeah,
is
yeah, yeah, we're here. Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
sure there's a
I
lot of
guess
work.
because it was so reactive in the second time in just as many weeks. Yeah, it seems like there is this little bit of a kind of slow to the forefront. And so, like you said, why aren't you just making it available right now? It's because it's not ready, and so they
Well, I
had
mean,
to just
6
jump on
days
that.
is really close. Come on, like, do
Yeah,
it, right?
seriously,
So,
6 days. Yeah,
yeah, like, I can't wait. I hope to build something great. I've got a lot of friends at DeepMind, and they're very, very good, right? But,
right.
um, like, come on. And it's really good to see DeepMind kind of like throwing their hat in for something public like this, etc. Because, as a Londoner, I've often wondered, like, I've joked with people who interviewed for PolyAI and kind of many times, and I'll say it publicly, I've called DeepMind, a retirement home for young researchers, right? So I went there and frankly,
Sick burn.
actually, like, to look at just the objective output. Like,
Yeah.
DeepMind has done some great things, but I think really my joke to a lot of candidates who were kind of like deciding between us and DeepMind was, I imagine this day where like they just, I think that the yearly burn of DeepMind was 370 million in one year. And
Okay.
I'm just thinking like, the ROI case for the Google CFO is probably, hey, the value of this talent being in Microsoft and Amazon and these startups, etc., and what it would take to like agglomerate it back would be like, I don't know, 4 billion, right? The potential opportunity cost of someone else doing something with them is potentially higher, right?
Right.
So the guy kind of like looks at his DocuSign approving the budget, right, for 370 and goes like, "Phew, the best work I did all month," right? Right, and that kind of like it felt that way because like they really weren't coming out with a lot of things, right, just in terms
Right.
of like papers and stuff. And they've worked on um and they've done a lot of cool stuff, but it's really good to see them like work on something that will be a direct competitor for the most important thing that might be happening in our lifetimes. So like, go DeepMind, I'm rooting for you.
Oh, okay. All right, cool. Well, we'll send you a soccer scarf and everything, so that you could just do the rah rahs as this
Mhm.
battle plays out.
Yeah.
I am curious though. Maybe going back to the Alliance AI, is this a genuine effort? Is this a genuine effort to like establish ethical practices? Kind of looking at their mission statement and a lot of like altruistic language and humanitarian backing behind it. It's important. We've discussed this in past episodes. How the essentiality of ethical deployments of AI and ethical use of AI, responsible use of AI, is just critical for its future success. But is it a lot of shine, and is it something that's going to be a flash in the pan, or is it something where the mission is going to change really quickly to be a little less altruistic and a little more commercially viable? What do you see as this playing out? What's the long play?
I don't really know. Like, I wish I had something juicier to give you, right? But I think it's there's a lot to do in this space. Will this institution be important or not? Will it be the League of Nations or the United Nations, right? Will
Right.
any purpose at all. Who knows, right? Like, I'm sure the intentions are good, so it remains
They've
to be
got some
seen. But
heavy hitters in the founding cohort. I mean, and a good balance to keep things honest.
yeah, yeah, no, I mean, it's federated learning, right? If you put like,
Right.
all the other companies, if they're really putting the majority of their effort behind this. But like you mentioned Meta, right? I mean, like Jan LeCun is one of like, the strongest voices, and I think one of the most reasonable ones in terms of like, hey, like we're not facing existential risk. He also has very interesting thoughts around, what is needed to further advance AI and how we get to like, the next level. I mean, they've got pretty serious internal efforts, right? So to think that this now becomes some kind of like, like shared effort with a bunch of universities where it's all one effort, I mean, that's just practically really hard to coordinate, right?
Right.
So I don't know. I don't know. Let's wait and see.
Well, I guess the future will
What do you
tell.
think? You're very skeptical, clearly.
I always think that there's some marketing angle behind it, and as a professional marketer, I can sort of see sort of the sublying signs there. I think it's honorable to have this sort of approach that says, look, we want to be a foundational consortium of entity. We want our name in that plaque that says this is the group that established like protocols that we follow to this day, sort of the new wave global constitution of AI. Um i just i don't think, because it's such a marketly or a such a market viable direction right now, a lot of companies are getting really wealthy off of these technologies because they're so new, they're so transformative, that it's hard. And it sort of brings to mind the slight skepticism behind the golden boy of generative AI around looking at Sam Altman and being like, what was going on behind those doors? Was he like either pushing or advocating for a commercial take, that's something that was going to sort of nullify the open in open AI? Who knows? It's a really, really good question. And there's just only so much information we have. So as you said, the future is going to play it out. The future is going to demonstrate, and kind of either the tarnish wears off and it shows what it truly is, or this could be something that is a foundational entity in the future of global
Yeah,
adoption of AI.
look. Just looking at the map, there is no Chinese participation,
True.
right? China produces half of the world's like machine learning research these days. Um, then there's OpenAI, then there's Google. Like when you just look at that, these guys have at best a 10% market share of like the meaningful contributors to this stuff. So like maybe it's a GCP in early days fighting to be the third player, but uh,
Maybe. Or maybe OpenAI and Google were extended an invitation to the dance and they just declined politely. Who knows?
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, who knows?
Cool. Well, I think we're running up on time. Any last thoughts on this, or what you're excited to see with regards to what future weeks and months hold?
Well, I mean, I think it's going to get really exciting when Google release Gemini, right? Let's see if they can dethrone GPT-4. I think that would be really good. It would give everyone, it's even more excitement around the speed of making progress.
Yeah.
Like, because I mean, you can't help but feel that if they continue to be as strong as they are, having survived their, organizational crisis. I mean, like OpenAI is so far ahead that, like let's get some competition in there,
Yeah.
and like if they released tunable GPT-4, I think that's going to be really exciting. But let's see.
All right. Sounds good. Let's see the kind of the overall sentiment of today's episode. Let's see. Can't wait. All
We'll
right.
speak next week.
Yeah. Stay tuned in 1 week for a critical update. No, well, I appreciate your time, Nikola. It's always a pleasure to chat with you about this stuff, and we will chat with you soon.
Same here. See you later. Enjoy your mushroom coffee.
Well, I will try.